Hello all of you out there, and in today's video I'm going to share with you the top 10 most powerful Ark creatures, so let's get into it. In at number 10 is the Basilisk, and this creature is definitely very well renowned for its damage dealing abilities. And what would you really expect? This is a massive snake which can deal so much damage to so many creatures and can really ruin any Ark player's day if used effectively. And the only real downside about this thing is its slightly annoying taming method. Slightly is really an underestimate. Very annoying taming method where you have to use rock drake eggs on Operation, but you can use magmasaur eggs and wyvern eggs as well if you want to. Then drop them around it without aggroing it, and then you'll tame yourself one of these things, and that can be an absolute drag, especially if you're using rock drakes on Operation for rock drake eggs and you haven't got a rock drake yet. That can be a complete drag, but I don't know why you would just get rock drake eggs for a basilisk before even getting a rock drake. But in terms of their damage, obviously these things have a very powerful bite, but they also have a torpor dealing ability on top of that too. Next up, we have the Rock Drake, and again with the Operation theme. And this creature really cannot be missed out in any sense at all in terms of powerful creatures. This thing has an insanely incredible bite, also dealing a wealth of damage compared to its size and transportability ratio. As yet, it is all good having a big, hunking, powerful creature, and actually they are in at the number 1 and number 2 spots, but it is also very important in a creature like this to have the mobility to go around, and its size to damage ratio is absolutely insane, although it definitely is not the most powerful Ark creature. Otherwise this thing would be in number 1, but I'm sure you can infer that because this thing is in at number 9. In terms of just its bite though, it deals a lot of damage, but also it does have a great glide ability as well, which no other Ark creature before that really had. And I'm pretty sure it can't do what the Griffin can do and dive onto creatures and deal damage to them, but still its bite, which I keep saying, I feel like a broken record, it just deals so much damage, and it really can't be discounted when it turns in terms of the Rock Drake's abilities. That kind of bite is just what makes this thing so powerful. But what would you expect? That kind of is the main ability that most carnivores have to deal damage. Now, next up we have the Rex, and this had to be in the list at some point realistically. This is one of the best boss creatures, partly because it is allowed into boss arenas, but also it is just a very well balanced creature, meaning it has a good health stat and a good damage stat to go along with that too, which some other creatures like the Spino and the Aloe can't really compete with, especially when it comes with health. The Spino does do a little bit more damage than the Rex, but it doesn't have enough health to keep up with it, which is why in my opinion the Rex is a more powerful creature. Although this isn't a video about tanks, otherwise creatures like the Stego would be here, but creatures like the Stego pale in comparison compared to the Rex. This creature is just so buff and beefy, and really what would you expect from a carnivore of this size and with a head and teeth that big? You can tell this thing is going to really pack a punch. But low level ones aren't actually the greatest and can be extremely weedy, especially in the stamina and weight department. So if you are taming a Rex, I would definitely say go over level 100 for your first one, as they really aren't very difficult tames, especially on ASA now, as the babies are really easy to find. But unless a really other random circumstance happens, like a Rex gets trapped, or you just find a baby Rex on ASA, which can simply be tamed by press of a button, always try looking for above level 100 Rexes, as that is going to give you the best results, and it is also meaning that if you do breed those Rexes in future or tame more above level 100s, you're going to have a significantly higher chance of defeating those bosses. Now, the Golem again can't be discounted. This creature is literally a living tank. Although we aren't talking about tanks today, and apart from it being a tank, it also packs an absolute punch when it comes into damage. This thing is insane at dealing any kind of damage to any kind of creature, really. No creature can really stand this creature in terms of buffs against it, and I'm pretty sure no creature really does have a buff against it, apart from those which has a buff against all creatures. That was really an irrelevant point there. But either way, the Golem is an insanely powerful creature, and you can just see how quickly it shreds through this Death Worm. And if you have a rock golem, then it is really easy to tame a mantis, as those death worms are going to be some of the easiest things to kill. Sadly, you can't really take these things into bosses, at least I don't think you can, but still in the real world Ark map, just around the map, these things are absolutely insane. And especially if you transfer cryopods onto Scorched Earth, or just make cryopods on Scorched Earth, these things can be a really good wyvern trench destroyer, as they can just kill all the wyverns in the trench, and then boom, these wyverns are going to be really easy to tame. Next up, we have the Reaper, and this creature again is just one of those creatures which has to be on this list for so many reasons. It is a creature of immense power, and it is just absolutely insane how much damage this creature deals, and its taming method is an absolutely amazing one to go on top of that as well. Unless you're on Gen 2, then it is an absolute cheese. But on Operation, it is a real experience to tame yourself a Reaper, and that is something which I really enjoy about this creature. Its taming method, and once it's tamed, there's just such a big journey and sense of progress once tamed one. And also, on top of that, it does deal a hefty amount of damage, although I'm pretty sure it is not allowed into boss arenas. And the Reaper kind of stands with creatures like the Giga in terms of damage, and although they're not as big as a Giga, they definitely pack punch like the Giga does, although not quite as much, but their size is a lot smaller as well, and they are significantly more mobile, which the Giga simply doesn't have. In at number 5 is the Rhoganatha, and would you really expect any other creature to take this spot on the list, or even be up in the kind of central part of this list? Obviously, this is one of the newer Ark Tames, so I can't really put it in at number 1, as we haven't seen its full potential yet, as it hasn't been used for absolute years, but also it hasn't really been nerfed in any kind of way. And the fact that this thing can pick up Rexes and absolutely decimate bases is really something to be said. These creatures deal an insane amount of damage to anything. Like I said, they can absolutely destroy bases and ruin everyone's life apart from the person riding it. And also on ASA, you'll find an abundance of these things, whereas on ASE, these things are extremely rare. And on ASA, I have had several encounters with these things, and with their wealth of abilities, you can easily pretty much demobile another player on a creature, or just anything which you're trying to kill or take for yourself, and then simply dispose of it as you wish, which is not really anything any other Ark creature has, at least to this extent. And it kind of does make sense for its insane power, considering its really long taming method, which requires a hell of a lot of resources if you want 100% effectiveness, although that is not required to get the absolutely insanity out of this creature. And a net gun is going to be extremely helpful in taming it, but obviously in ASA at the moment we don't have access to the net gun, so this thing is actually somewhat even more difficult in ASA, especially because there are more of these things lying around, and when taming one or killing one to get the pheromones, you can really get yourself in a pickle if another one comes around. But also in the early game, if you're flying around on your Pteranodon 2 and one of these things faces you, you're going to have the worst time. Just say goodbye to that Pteranodon. Whereas with Nagi, it might be able to withstand a little bit if it's a low level, but still, these things are absolutely insanely OP, and their taming method kind of roughly follows the Reapers. Next up, we have the Shadowman. And the reason why I am saying this creature is more powerful is also because it is a lot more useful in some scenarios out there. This thing has the pack buff, it has the hydration buff, and it can even go invisible too, and the list even goes on further than that. But I can't really remember what other abilities this thing wields. Its main claim to fame obviously being that this thing is allowed in bosses, and like the Deinonychus, it is absolutely insane for that. But in the real world too, this thing can jump to incredible heights, meaning that no Pteranodon is safe in the sky when you have one of these things. And you can just see there how high I actually jumped. It is absolutely insane with the mobility of this creature. Also, it can even charge its damage up over time, and it is really great in the water too. Its only real downside is the fact that its taming method is an absolute slog and is one of the hardest in the game in my opinion. Speaking of the Deinonychus, in at number 3 is the Deinonychus, and the reason why I think this creature is more powerful than the Shadowman is pretty much because this thing has all the same buffs as the Shadowman, but one insane advantage. This thing obviously still has the pack buff. Sadly, it can't go invisible, but its mobility is still extremely high, having no full damage and being able to climb up walls. But the main thing its claim to fame has to be is the fact that this thing can inflict insane amounts of bleed damage. Not sure if the Shadowman can deal bleed damage. I don't think so, as that creature is allowed into bosses, and this is the only creature which is allowed into bosses which has that bleed damage, and it works on bosses too. And when you have a pack on these things, and then you can just absolutely decimate bosses with these things, it is an absolute cheese for every single boss which you face. And I really can't wait for these things to be in ASA when Valguero comes out, on ASA obviously, but we still have them on ASE to enjoy all of the time. These things are pretty much some of the easiest tames in the game, which is really to their benefit of power as well, especially considering their size. They're pretty much the same size as a raptor, but a raptor cannot face this thing in any sense of damage, health, mobility, any of that. This is essentially just the raptor on absolutely insane steroids, and this creature will not disappoint you in any circumstance. In at number 2 is the Giga, and you can probably tell why these things are now on the list and why this thing is at number 2, and from this you can probably guess what's in number 1 anyway. But in terms of the Giga's abilities, this thing is an absolute hunk when it comes to power. Sadly, when it is tamed, it loses its bleed ability, although it is still a beast of anything damage, and its health is one really to be reckoned with. Killing a wild Giga is significantly harder than killing a tamed one, but still one which is tamed will take an absolutely immense long time to actually kill. Unless you're facing the Alpha King Titan, then it might have an easier job of killing all of your Gigas. But that's why you assemble an absolute army of those things. And there's only one other creature which you could really use for killing those titans, which is obviously the creature which is in at number 1. And the fact that this creature is in ASA already, although not very useful until Extinction comes out, it is insane that we still have this creature around. Obviously, it was first introduced on the island in 2016, and it was an absolute beast then, and it still is an absolute beast now. Its only real downside is its absolutely abysmal abysmal stamina, also very annoying rage meter, and just general inconvenience. And in at number 1 is the Carnocerasaurus, which for some reason YouTube chapters always thinks it is a Chronosaurus, and I have no idea what a Chronosaurus is. Maybe it is just a Carnocerasaurus, but made out of cryopods. Who knows at this point? But the reason why I think this is a more powerful creature than the Giga is mainly because it is a faster creature, it has more mobility, and also when its blood rage is full, it will deal more damage than the Giga, so therefore it is just a more powerful creature. And it doesn't have the rage meter as well, so it effectively has more health too, as the Giga is unusable after that rage meter is full, whereas this thing can go all the way down to 1 HP, and then from there obviously this thing is going to die. Sadly, once tamed, you'll have to dismount it, which is a little bit of an annoying one due to its taming method being very different from the Gigas, basically allowing you to feed it dead creatures and then ride it around, and then obviously kill loads of creatures to get it up to 100%. So it's a little bit sad that you get dismounted off of it, but it kind of does make sense. This thing is an absolute beast, and you really should give it a go. But also, just before I do the outro of this video, I know the Titans and the Titanosaur could be very good on this list. The Managama is another one as well, and also just so many other creatures which I have missed on this list. And I know sometimes you have some other opinions on these things, so always leave them down in the comments below. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I really hope that you all enjoyed this one, as I really did enjoy making it. And I will see you all in the next one once you've commented down below your most powerful Ark Tame.